So, good day everybody. My name is Hannu Hoffren and this guy is Holmberg, and we are from Studio Lumiku, and nice to be here. It's my first time in Amsterdam, and you are already...
This is my third time already,
okay.
So
veteran in my eyes, but anyway, what we are going to show you guys next is how we brought Big Bunny alive in Blender 2.5, and also we tell a little bit more about creating a company and going from the beginning to end product. So let's just hope there's something here. Little history about the studio. So we founded it in beginning of this year. And it's a cooperative organization. It's, five people at the moment working on it, and maybe I think you know a couple of people here already. For example, Janne Karhu and Nathan Letbury are the coder guys, creating lots of nice stuff with any problems we have with the Blender 2.5. And then the artists guys are we here, so we do the graphics stuff. And then there's Julius Tuomisto. He's kind of the all-around.
Wait for us, Julius.
Yeah. he's the all-around guy. Really doing screenwriting and making some music. And maybe the most important part is being the businessman of the company. So he makes lots of networking and also kicks us butts, really. He's the reason why we are standing here. He just told in the IRC that, okay, I just put you guys in the list, and okay, let's see what's going to happen. But at least somehow working now here. Little bit about my own history in Blender. I started using it in 2007. I actually found it a bit earlier, but I really got interested in when I saw the fluid simulation. And we had one project where we needed fluids, and the budget is really, we didn't have any big budgets over there, so really wanted to learn Blender through Fluid Sim. And then actually when the project was ready, we already saw that Blender was way enough for our needs in 3D stuff. So we switched completely to Blender at the same year. I think...
My turn.
Yeah, tell something about your stuff.
This work? Yeah. So I started my Blender career probably well, it's about 10 years now. I don't have an exact date. It's been a while, and I don't really remember how it all came together in the beginning. But I think I began like probably quite many at that time. I bought a magazine, and it came with a CD with a version of Blender on it. And it also had a tutorial on how to make some kind of a simple scene in Blender. And for some reason I was sold from the beginning. I've always, through my 3D career, I've always used Blender as my 3D tool. Now lately, some help from Lightwave. I've also had a bit of help from 3ds Max, but I've switched completely now to Blender and Lightwave. Lightwave mainly for some visualization tasks and rendering, because Lightwave's render engine is quite good. Now, of course, when we have cycles coming, I hope that I can make kind of a switch again back to Blender and start to use Blender completely. And compositing, mainly After Effects, but of course a bit of Blender and motion as well.
What do we have next? Yeah, working with distances. Did I say we are from Finland? And all of us are quite scrambled around, really. I live in Kuopio, quite north in Finland, or maybe in middle of Finland, but it's really north compared to Amsterdam. So then a couple hundreds of kilometers down to south, then there is two guys in Turku, and you are, what's Raasepori, is it?
Raasepori.
Okay. And then one guy in Helsinki, Julius, is over there. So we really don't have that much of meetings like face-to-face. So the main ways to plan stuff is through IRC. Then there's Basecamp, one solution from Delicode. We can use timetables over there and that kind of stuff. And then Skype also, or G Talk, Google Talk. But actually, I think the 90% of the planning is done through IRC or email maybe. We don't even do much of face video conference meetings, at least not yet. But I don't know, maybe it's going to change because at the moment
Well, I mean, we met last time in August, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
So the way of working at the moment is a little bit different to the normal studio. It's quite going from one guy and almost ready over there, then another guy is doing the rest, and it's not the best solution, I think, if you really want to fine-tune stuff, but I think
we're still starting out, so
yeah.
It's not really fixed.
Nothing about Blender 2.5.
Not really, no.
I wonder if we have the network. Well, let's see what's next. Oh, okay. Let's just continue with the what do we use. We both are lots, I think, interested about visual effects and composition. So After Effects, I think it's still the main tool for us, but we really would like to use Blender a lot more. Actually, I use quite a lot of Blender nodes in the still graphics and that kind of stuff. But my experience in After Effects is many times longer than in Blender, so with tight schedules and budgets, it's better for me just to go straight to After Effects and do things faster there. But really try to, especially really excited about the next project in Blender, so the tomato stuff and all the stuff that's coming. So I'm really interested in checking it all the time out, that maybe I could switch stuff more back to Blender, also in the VFX stuff. But at the moment, character animations with the render passes, all those stuff you are making in Blender, but actually they are almost quite ready-made. So it's almost kind of ready-made render what I get into After Effects, usually without any backgrounds or that kind of effects stuff. And then just also the camera data. This is, by the way, really, I don't know, is Bartek around here? Bartek Skorupa is maintaining now at the moment, mainly maintaining the Blender to After Effects script, which is really working really nicely. So the Blender camera data can be imported to After Effects really nicely. So it's really easy to make some simple 3D layers in After Effects and have the camera movement, all the parallax and all this stuff over there. So it's anything you do with the camera in Blender, you have it in After Effects. So it makes things really easy and fast. So what in After Effects, then there is the backgrounds and all the more like flares and color correction and all those kind of stuff. Also particles. I really love to work with particles, but at the moment, and again, the time and the actually the time is the main thing why I do most of the particles at the moment in the After Effects in particular. So it's one thing that I'm really waiting to see all the no particle nodes and all those stuff, what's coming in Blender. So I'm really interested in stuff coming, but what next? You can try. I try to find the network. Or not. We should. We should show one of the animations we got already, the first one, but now we don't have it. So maybe we just continue.
Well, we have to go on. I mean, you can see the films on YouTube, and well, I'll be telling a bit more about them, so you'll probably find them anyway. But sorry about that. We would have liked to show.
Actually, really interested to ask. How many have you seen one of these? It's one of. One is called the. First one was the render farm.fi animation, and another one was for 3D connection.
Yeah, well, I can go through them.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'll be talking a little bit, sort of more generally about how we made these Big Buck Bunny productions. I won't go into too much detail about how we specifically created them, because they are quite sort of made in quite a straightforward way, and we really don't think that they are, from a production standpoint, that they would be in any way so special. So, of course, if you have any questions, anything you want to know, just interrupt me and ask. And afterwards, we'll be here, of course, all weekend. So, first off, what's been done? Well, we've done almost 3 films so far. 2 of them are finished, and the third one is still work in progress. It'll be finished within about a week from now. I think the absolute deadline is probably about a week and a half away from this day, so so it'll be quite quickly finished. The first film that we made was made for renderfarm.fi, and I'll probably mention renderfarm.fi quite a bit because we had a lot of issues making these films, and a lot of the issues that we had directly were related to rendering, not only renderfarm.fi, but also that service. So the first film is mainly about the bunny explaining about what render farm it is, what we mean by distributed rendering, and why it's a good thing and who it's for. And this was completed in April this year, I guess. And it's been running on the renderfarm.fi site and YouTube ever since. I think it has about 20,000 views.
How many views?
About, yeah. And the second film, which was in a way a bit more serious, it was kind of a spin-off of the first one. I don't know the details. I think Julius could tell more about that, but we were approached by 3D Connection, which of course is quite a large company. At that time it was still, I believe, a part of Logitech. I'm not sure if it is anymore. But they approached us, and they had seen the first film that we made, and they were quite sort of inspired by that, and they wanted to make a similar film, or a film that sort of had the same spirit as the Render Farm film, but in a bit more commercial way, so that we could... Oh, okay. So they wanted to make more of a commercial, showcasing, of course, their products, but mainly the Blender integration of their devices. And this was meant to be showcased at SIGGRAPH this year, and it was. So the Blender integration was done by SIGGRAPH, and also our film was revealed at SIGGRAPH. And now the third and final film that we're... no one knows if it's the last one, but, but at least for now, the final one is still being made, but it's again one film for Render Farm, and it's a film about the bunny talking about Creative Commons licensing, and why Creative Commons licensing is such a good thing for an actor like himself. And why would we start using Big Buck Bunny for these kind of films? Well, the original idea was again by Julius, I guess, and it was probably quite. We were just interested to see if Big Buck Bunny could be used a bit further. He had appeared in one short, and we thought about this a bit, and just sort of, it's a bit of a. It's quite a difficult thing because you don't really know how people will react by us using, but we wanted to try. And of course, when you think about Blender, many people think directly about Big Buck Bunny for some reason, and so that has sort of a value also when we think about marketing. And of course, Big Buck Bunny, being open source, suits us pretty well because our studio is all about open source and openness and open technologies and social media and all that. He's a big, lovable character, of course. I guess no one can deny that. And as a small point, I added that, of course, I think at least during last spring, we didn't have too many sort of serious projects going on or being rendered on Render Farm. And that way, at least I saw it as kind of, we could use this kind of production as a benchmark for the Render Farm service as well, just to root out any problems that we might encounter.
Try and see.
Well, we can see if we get one film
I think
working.
it would be nice if we could show it. So you get the idea what we are talking about actually. So
Kingston.
yeah, I think so. I don't have a Kingston.
Forgot about the time. We have 15 more minutes.
15 minutes, okay.
Because it's 14 total.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Lumikuu. Näin sulle that. Okay, so this is a final version of the film, yeah. Okay, so this is the 3D connection film. So the first one we'll skip. Audio.
Do we have audio?
Is the audio?
Let's try this. Just on its own.
Well, hello. My name is Big Buck Bunny. You might know me from such films as Big Buck Bunny. For today, I've been asked to tell you about 3D mice and how they can make your life easier as a...
Sorry, let's take a...
Well, I think it buffers it,
But it didn't get any better, so I guess.
we don't have time.
I can sprint through the rest, I guess.
Text to desktop. Straight to desktop.
It'll get there.
Well, hello. My name is Big Buck Bunny. You might know me from such films as Big Buck Bunny. For today, I've been asked to tell you about 3D mice and how they can make your life easier as a digital artist. Traditionally, the creation of digital three-dimensional content has relied on two-dimensional input devices. Over time, this can result in a sore arm as well as some less than appetizing visuals. Well, fortunately, there are better ways of doing this. In the real world, objects have many dimensions and we interact with our surroundings with two hands. You wouldn't peel an apple with just one hand, would you? Once upon a time, we only had access to simple two-dimensional input devices. This meant that replicating natural interactions with computers was difficult. A 3D mouse really makes a difference. Working with a 3D mouse in one hand and a standard mouse in the other, you can access and interact with all three dimensions at the same time. And it's more well, let's just say it feels good. With 3D mouse, actions like panning, zooming, and rotating suddenly just make a whole lot of sense. Indeed, interaction between you and your computer has never been so real. With more than 1 million 3D mice sold, there are a whole lot of people using them. From engineers to artists, from architects to geographers, even gamers. I feel like a young bunny again. So, you see, people from all kinds of backgrounds and industries are using 3D mice to make their lives easier and more fun. I already have mine. Shouldn't you also get one soon?
Yeah.
So if we look quickly at the production itself, Ton told us we had a bit of a rush.
I think just
Slideshow, great.
full screen.
Great. So that one was about 2.5 minutes long. And in fact, I think each of our videos are about 2.5. The last one may be a bit shorter, it's 2 minutes, 15 seconds or so. So the basic workflow, as I said, wasn't that special. We had to do it in quite a sort of normal way, and we didn't make any very original decisions because we didn't have too much time. And still, we have two pairs of hands making this, and 2.5 minutes of animation is quite a bit of work. So the first thing we did, we got the script and voiceover made by Julius. So Julius is the voice of the bunny as well. And on that, based on that, I made a rough animatic, which just showed the overall flow of the animation. I chose to do the lip sync animation first, and I separated the lip sync animation completely from the rest so that I combined them in the NLA editor later. And that's just because I knew that the lip sync will take a lot of time to do. And I just wanted to have a frontal view of the bunny and make the lip syncing. And after that, start thinking about the rest of the animation. Because the lip sync is the thing that you can't, I mean, it has to be done at least to some level, and it has to be somehow consistent over the whole film. Prop modeling, not too many things. There was an airplane, a table, a box, something like that, so it wasn't too difficult. The animation, quite straight ahead animation, just from start to end. I tried to animate in a way that would allow me to make the whole film, sort of grasp the whole film at a time, because again, I knew that the time is really limited, and if it runs out, then we're in kind of trouble. So we had to have the whole film animated, and then if we had time, then I had the possibility to go in and then find something, which never really happened. But texturing, lighting, basic compositing. The compositing was a bit difficult at first because I had to go in and try to get a hang of how the original Big Buck Bunny files were created, and it was quite a mess and really difficult. Also because, of course, we brought in files that were made for 2.46 into 2.5, and that messed it up even further. So it was quite a bit of work. Now in this final movie, I guess my compositing in Blender is mainly just adding vector blur, so it's really sort of simplified over time. Also, I render out a few different passes to Hannu, so he's able to composite, make shadows and stuff like that. Rendering was done on Render Farm, and as I said, this was the most problematic. I'll get back to that in a second. And then I downloaded the sequences from the farm and transferred them to Hannu, who then made the final magic and composited the film together. So challenges from the beginning, what we knew about was, of course, that the time budget was limited, and the problem with the fact that we're only two people working directly with the production. Another issue was, as I said, the fact that bringing in files from 2.46 into 2.5, objects, textures and such, they work okay, but of course when you go down to rigs and bring in rigs from 2.49 or 2.40 something, it easily breaks down. One challenge was I didn't know if Render Farm could handle this amount. I mean, they are quite large files, and because of all the strands that need to be rendered, they demand quite a bit of, they have quite a large memory consumption, etc. So I didn't really know how well it would work, so I just assumed it will, which in a way was maybe a little quick assumption, but one challenge was to keep the character as true to himself as possible. I didn't really lose any sleep over this because I think that already the fact that we gave him a voice changed him quite a bit from the original movie. But of course we didn't want him to we didn't want him to be completely different from the original film, but have some of the traits maybe that he's used to, or which people are used to seeing him. So the fur and strands were the most problematic thing that we encountered during rendering. But first off, with the rigs, they worked fairly well. The biggest thing is, of course, that the Python API in 2.5 has changed completely. And we don't have anything called Py constraints anymore, which was used quite heavily in the rigs that I brought in from 2.46. Also, some action constraints didn't work. So when you brought in, or when you bring in Big Buck Bunny from the old production files into 2.5, you have a bunch of bones that are oriented wrongly, so you can have his belly up in his head, for example. But my solution, because again, all time constraints and everything that we had, it would have been, I think it could have been easier to just build the rig from scratch, because they are quite complex, and it's really difficult to dive into someone else's work and try to figure out how it works and then try to correct them, especially when you have a lot of Py constraints with scripts linked to them. And I'm no scripter, so it's really difficult. So in fact, what I did for these films, as I knew that we don't do any very extreme movements or anything, so I just disabled the constraints that didn't work. For example, the belly and neck. But it weren't very many bones. I think about 3 bones that I had to disable the constraints for. And I just assumed that it's easier for me to animate an extra couple of bones than to start to build the rig from scratch. I used a lot of time on that. So the hardest thing to figure out was the fact that when rendered, all the particles started to flicker. So we had, for example, the bunny looked like he would have a different set of hairs for each and every frame that was rendered. So it always sort of crawled and flickered. And that turned out to be a quite hidden option called child simplification in the particle settings. I don't know if anyone uses that, but if anyone has gotten it to work in 2.5, I'd really like to know, because I haven't found a single solution where it would work. So the only thing I could do was either enable it and everything would fall apart, or disable it and everything would work. And whatever I did with the options had no effect whatsoever. And I tried to, of course, ask in the forums and IRC about this. I talked to Janne Karhu as well, because he's so close to us. But I think Janne told me that even though he's done, of course, most of the particle stuff in Blender, this was one of the options that he had no clue about. So I didn't have much help with that either. So the solution for that was really just to flick it off and have it working. But of course that brings in another problem. First off, the child simplification was used in the original film for a reason. The reason being that it simplifies and it sort of dynamically reduces the amount of particle children that you have on your fur. So you can have a character with a huge amount of particles, but depending on the, for example, the distance from the camera, it would dynamically reduce the amount so that it also reduces the memory consumption. And of course, when I took the option off, it meant that my memory consumption just, and I believe that the worst cases, the worst scenes we had went up to about 8 gigabytes at render time. And it might not sound at all that huge, but when you think about, for example, render farm, which has, at least on a principal level, it has a limit of 3 gigabytes, so that's kind of an issue. And the difficulty of getting it down from 6 or 8 gigabytes to under 3 is quite a big thing. But I had to manually reduce the amount of children to a point where when I did test renders, I could check if the fur is thick enough and get it to work. The scenes, almost all scenes, took more than 3 gigabytes anyway, but I didn't tell anyone. I just put them to render, so no one ever said anything, so it seemed to work. Another issue which also was related to fur was the fact that they had some kind of validator on the render farm, which it was supposed to work, but it didn't work. And the point was that it would somehow check for frames that weren't rendered correctly and then re-render those frames. But that system didn't work. It works now, because I tried it in the latest movie, and we had no problems whatsoever. So. But for the 2 first movies that we made, it didn't work. And that meant that we had, again, probably about 1/5 of all rendered frames. We had a bunny who had no fur, but he had all the shadows anyway, so it was a sort of a black lump. And it was again, it took quite a bit of time to just re-render every single frame locally. And the fact that the frames, of course, were random meant that we had to, by hand, figure out which frames weren't rendered correctly. And then Nathan made a script for us that we could sort of make a text file of the missing frames and have Blender render those locally. But it's when you have about 4,000 frames, I think a bit under 4,000 frames, then to go through those amount and try to pick out those which don't work. So that's quite a bit of work as well. So as I said, render farm had a couple of restrictions, 3 gigabyte memory limit. That's not a huge issue, but it's kind of it's understandable, but you would want to have it a bit higher. One issue was that there was no support for full sample anti-aliasing, which again is a bit of a problem when you do compositing, because I noticed that there were times where I would have liked to render out in different render layers and then composite them together. But it was a bit difficult because without the FSA you always get, or you tend to get kind of outlines around your layers, and it was quite difficult. I guess today they have the FSA working, at least in some ways, so I don't believe that that's a problem anymore. As I said, I've tried to simplify all scenes so that nowadays I usually just composite the vector blur. A few words. Yeah. Render farm output only PNG images. That's a bit of a drag, not to. I would have liked, of course, to render into multi-layer EXR so that I could render every pass in a single sort of, or be able to get the EXRs from the farm and then composite afterwards, but that wasn't possible, so I had to render all passes as different scenes and get different PNG sequences out. And a small issue that we discussed about with the fact that Blender has, or we think that Blender has a bit of an issue with PNG files, and the fact that
After Effects.
Or After Effects, we don't really know, but there was a discussion about this on the mailing list just a few weeks ago, I don't remember. But that's also, we think that Blender interprets the alpha channel a bit differently than maybe other programs, because when transferring them to After Effects, it was easy to get, again, some kind of black or dark outlines. Or Okay, that's it from my part. I rushed through it a bit quickly, but I guess we're okay.
Done.
Oh, bye. A bit over time.
Any quick questions, maybe? Sure.
You mean with the farm, render farm? That's a question I guess you have to really ask maybe Julius about, because I don't know really. I just sent the files.
Otherwise, we use Dropbox, just PNG files to Dropbox. And Dropbox.
Yeah, between us. The usual blend file size, I guess, was about, I don't know, maybe 60 to 80 megabytes for one file. When you render with the render farm, you also need to pack everything into that one file, and you can't use any linked files or anything. So everything has to go into one file, and it makes them quite large. But I don't really know how that was done on the farm. I'm a user. I just rendered. I sent them away and forgot about them. But between us, we use Dropbox quite a bit, so it's a simple solution to transfer files. Yep.
That's a silly question. I mean, you tried to use 2.5. Was this your main goal, or because you faced so many problems now? And I mean, you as a production studio, you want to finish this, so never considered to continue with 2.4x?
Not really, no. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, of course, the fact that render farm it's based on 2.5. So if we want to use the render farm, which was quite essential because it speeds up our rendering quite a bit, we had to use 2.5 and the upload script there. And of course, from the beginning, we had some thoughts about maybe creating a kind of a new or modified rig that will work perfectly in 2.5. We haven't really had time to do that, but it might happen. We don't know. Yep.
How fast are you getting frames back?
Usually, I probably sent a couple of scenes to render for a night or so. So it could be
Julius giving presentation on Sunday. Sunday. I remember to show
Anyway, all the statistics are on the website for everywhere.
Yeah.
So, for example, the latest scene with the latest animation, you can basically go to the web page and you can see how fast it's rendered. But usually what happens is that the first 80% of the frames come really fast. The first 10% of the last.
And it's still a bit manual in the sense that you have to, when you send your file to be rendered, you have a real person at the other end who has to sort of accept that file. So it's still a manual process, and then it's of course depending on whether that person is on vacation or is available, or so it can take. But I guess within 24 hours we had everything we needed. So it's not. I mean, it could be a bit quicker, of course, but I guess that it's still a huge time saver if you compare it to rendering on a local machine.
I think we have to.
Yep. Great.
Okay. Thanks.
No, mä koitan katsoa. Vitti repistä, ne tyhjitään heti.
Tuossa on se tuo uusi. Ottaa seuraavana. Ulos.
I think this should work if you need the internet.
I don't know.
Okay.
And it's on. And the
Older version of the presentation here, but so there might be some little weird stuff here, but let's just start. Yeah, the slides. That one. Okay, I think it's. This one? Fits. Thanks. So, good day everybody. My name is Hannu Hoffren and this guy is Holmberg. And we are from Studio Lumiku. And nice to be here. It's my first time in Amsterdam and you are already...
This is my third time. Already,
okay.
so
veteran in my eyes. But anyway, what we are going to show you guys next is how we brought Big Bunny alive in Blender 2.5, and also we tell a little bit more about creating a company and going from the beginning to end product. So let's just hope there's something here. Little history about the studio. So we founded it in beginning of this year. And it's a cooperative organization. It's, five people at the moment working on it, and maybe I think you know a couple of people here already. For example, Janne Karhu and Nathan Letbury are the coder guys, creating lots of nice stuff with any problems we have with the Blender 2.5, and then the artists guys are we here, so we do the graphics stuff. And then there's Julius Tuomisto. He's kind of the all-around.
Wait for us, Julius.
Yeah. He's the all-around guy. Really doing screenwriting and making some music. And maybe the most important part is being the businessman of the company. So he makes lots of networking and also kicks us butts, really. He's the reason why we are standing here. He just told in the IRC that, okay, yeah, I just put you guys in the list, and okay, let's see what's going to happen. But at least somehow working now here. Little bit about my own history in Blender. I started using it in 2007. I actually found it a bit earlier, but I really got interested in when I saw the fluid simulation. And we had one project where we needed fluids, and the budget is really, we didn't have any big budgets over there, so really wanted to learn Blender through Fluid Sim. And then actually when the project was ready, we already saw that Blender was way enough for our needs in 3D stuff. So we switched completely to Blender at the same year. I think,
My turn.
yeah, tell something about your stuff.
This work? Yep. So I started my Blender career probably well, it's about 10 years now. I don't have an exact date. It's been a while, and I don't really remember how it all came together in the beginning, but I think I began like probably quite many at that time. I bought a magazine, and it came with a CD with a version of Blender on it. And it also had a tutorial on how to make some kind of a simple scene in Blender. And for some reason, I was sold from the beginning. I've always, through my 3D career, I've always used Blender as my 3D tool. Now lately, some help from Lightwave. I've also had a bit of help from 3ds Max, but I've switched completely now to Blender and Lightwave. Lightwave mainly for some visualization tasks and rendering, because Lightwave's render engine is quite good. Now, of course, when we have cycles coming, I hope that I can make kind of a switch again back to Blender and start to use Blender completely. And compositing, mainly After Effects, but of course a bit of Blender and motion as well.
What do we have next? Yeah, working with distances. Did I say we are from Finland? And all of us are quite scrambled around really. I live in Kuopio, quite north in Finland, or maybe in middle of Finland, but it's really north compared to Amsterdam. So then a couple hundreds of kilometers down to south, then there is two guys in Turku, and you are, what's Raasepori, is it?
Raasepori.
Okay. And then one guy in Helsinki, Julius, is over there. So we really don't have that much of meetings like face-to-face. So the main ways to plan stuff is through IRC. Then there's Basecamp, one solution from Delicode. We can use timetables over there and that kind of stuff. And then Skype also, or G Talk, Google Talk. But actually, I think the 90% of the planning is done through IRC or email maybe. We don't even do much of video conference meetings, at least not yet. But I don't know, maybe it's going to change because at the moment
Well, I mean, we met last time in August, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
So the way of working at the moment is a little bit different to the normal studio. It's quite going from one guy and almost ready over there, then another guy is doing the rest, and it's not the best solution, I think, if you really want to fine-tune stuff, but I think
we're still starting out, so
yeah.
It's not really fixed.
Nothing about Blender 2.5.
Not really, no.
I wonder if we have the